Welcome in. Thanks so much for joining me. So to continue in my series on how to get unstuck, I'm going to talk about a certain feature of the Buddhist path that falls into the category we call accumulation of merit. As I've said before in this series, I decided to offer a series on sort of what to do when we get stagnant or stuck in our practice. Things that I use, whether it's like a simple method of, relaxing a little bit more in my practice, or devotional practices. I've covered that before in a previous episode. Whatever it is, I'm going to offer you things that I find useful to help me remove stagnation in my practice. Up till now, mostly I've kept it sort of practical, and I guess from a Buddhist perspective, accumulating merit is very practical. But I do want to say this goes a little bit more into the religious department of Buddhism. If you're not okay with that, then, you don't have to listen or watch. But if you're okay with that, or if you're new to it and you just want to hear kind of what this is all about, stay and hang out with me. We'll discuss it a little bit. So, this is also quite a big topic, and accumulation of merit doesn't just fall into when we get stuck. It's sort of a major feature of the path. It's something that's encouraged, and a lot of the practices we do circle around this topic of accumulation of merit. I will say before we jump in, merit is not a great English word to represent what we're about to talk about. But I haven't seen any translators or anyone so far come up with a better word. And so instead, what we often do is we just have to unpack what that means and describe it. And it's such a large category, I'm not going to be able to talk about all types of accumulation of merit here, but just the general idea, and then give you a few practices to work with. So what is merit? Merit itself is an action taken on with the motivation to be awake, right? So at least the motivation to be awake oneself, but ideally within the Mahayana tradition, the motivation to be awake, to become free, to help free all beings, right? So there's this altruism that we reflect on, we call relative bodhicitta, and we grow it. That in itself is a practice that accumulates merit. But it also frames our intention for how a positive action becomes merit. And so merit, we often create a distinction between positive karma or beneficial karma and merit, because merit would be more in the category of some recognition of the nature of mind or the non-dual wisdom nature of reality. And then when we engage in a beneficial or positive action for ourselves or others with an intention of bodhicitta, that's fuller or it's held within an experience of non-duality as well. So that's like ideal, right? But probably I'm guessing for most of us, that's not really where we're at the moment, myself included. But I just want to point that out right away. That would be the ideal of how something actually becomes genuine merit. But with that said, if we generate relative bodhicitta and we engage in practice or study of Dharma or a compassionate or loving action, however small or big, that the result of that has the potential to bring us to awakening. And that's essentially what merit is. It's the potential to both bring us to awakening, and then it becomes the power or the, how do you say this, the sort of enlightened energy once we become enlightened that benefits others, right? So that merit gets built up. Then, of course, when someone attains Buddhahood, that takes on all this wealth of spiritual energy, power, wherewithal, efficacy to help and benefit others, to help free them. So that's why the motivation of bodhicitta is so key here. But also, of course, as I said, developing bodhicitta and motivating with it accumulates merit, right? So another way to think of this is that merit helps us to cut through our fixations. the more we accumulate merit on the path, we're able to remove the fixations that more or less keep us stagnated, or keep us locked in our ego clinging, or keep us locked in doubt, or not able to progress or move forward on something or to gain experience. Merit also can help to change our negative habits into positive ones, right? So, of course, we can do that directly through transforming our habits, but the more kind of wealth of spiritual merit we accumulate through practice, it makes it easier to do it. It just makes it easier to transform habit patterns from negative into positive ones. And I'll give you an example here. Some of you may be able to relate to what I'm about to say. Some of you maybe not. So we may have to break out the example. But for those of you who have either been on pilgrimage to sacred places of the Buddha or other saints, or you've been in a gathering, like a Sangha gathering, where there's a very, very developed teacher hosting the gathering and teaching, and we're doing practice, and we're receiving teachings, and we're conducting beneficial rituals with bodhicitta motivation. It's like all of that merit gets multiplied by the amount of people in the room, and you feel it. Like, you can walk away from those kinds of things. Sometimes they're larger monams or prayer ceremonies we might do, or pujas, or just, like I said, a teaching gathering for a week or two. And I know for me, sometimes when I walk away from those, often when I walk away from those and I get back, the patterns that bind me to suffering and, unfortunately lead me to sort of be unskillful with others sometimes, those patterns lessen. And all the patterns that are more compassionate, loving, having more discernment, etc., I notice there's like a boom, there's a boost. Those are there more. And then, of course, that fades, right? So I think that's also a result of accumulation of merit. And so sometimes I think this is why often I wonder sometimes why people sort of, tour around with certain teachers. I'll try to put it in a nice way. There's people I can see they sort of just follow a teacher around the world all the time. And nothing wrong with that. If they're practicing and they're with that teacher, great. That can be a wonderful thing. But I also thought of it over time, through my own experience, that it feels good to be around realized people, right? Like there's a boon from that. We're connecting into their merit. We're around a field of merit that they're constantly accumulating and disseminating and benefiting others with. So I think that's just one reason I've come up with where, we like being around people who have like good vibes. Let's just put it that way. or in a Buddhist jargon, we say realized or enlightened beings or whatever. So yeah, even when I've, been in teachings with the Dalai Lama, people just, their emotions open up very easily. And, it's very easy to sort of cry around it, but not like a sad cry, just like a cry of like just joy of like something you've never experienced. And so this can happen when we're around beings with a lot of merit, because it's also triggering our merit. And again, there's sort of a lot of ways to think about this. But my point is, when we're engaging in the accumulation of merit, or that's happening around us, it uplifts our mind, right? So we can see it's easier to change negative patterns or habits into positive ones. Another major reason for accumulating merit is to obtain good circumstances, just fortunate circumstances for practice, whether that's in the short term or the long term. We need good circumstances for practice in life if we want to develop more compassion and wisdom. So the accumulation of merit helps us along the path, right? So other than that, I would say, one teacher I have, he put it sort of like merit is it's natural to our Buddha nature. It's natural to our awakened nature. It's not like we're getting something else. We're just allowing our Buddha nature to come out more and more. Because naturally there's merit within our innate awakened nature in all beings. But also, of course, when we accumulate it, when we kind of quote unquote grow it, it has the illusion of it becoming larger and more effulgent and more, all of that. But either way, it's recommended by pretty much all lineage masters, all teachers of at least Mahayana and Vajrayana Buddhism, to spend a good amount of one's time accumulating merit. So like I said, the main way we do it is through the intention to be awake and to help awaken all beings. Through that intention, when we engage in something, act of generosity, an act of kindness, an act of patience, that in itself can accumulate merit, right? So to a lot of us, this just looks like, trying to embody bodhicitta as best we can, or at least think about it or reflect on it, and then going about our day in loving acts and acts of care to others. Again, it doesn't have to be like a huge act, though if you want to do that, wonderful. But engaging in an act of just simply giving someone a piece of bread or sharing one's bread with a loved one or something with a mind of bodhicitta, that accumulates vast amounts of merit. So often we can sometimes get stuck in this because we can think, okay, at one day or at some point I'm going to do something massive, some saintly activity. But actually, I think the saintly activities are in the day-to-day. They're in the everyday acts we do. And that's what's so beautiful here is we can use every part of our life to accumulate merit if we're embodying bodhicitta when we engage in that act, right? So we embody bodhicitta, we intend to do the act or act of speech or body or mind with the motivation of bodhicitta to be awake for the benefit of all beings, right? So that's one way to do it that I would say is a little bit more like the unofficial way, just in the sense like that would be the everyday. But of course, there are direct spiritual practices we do in Tibetan Buddhism to accumulate merit. One of the most widespread ones is something called a mandala offering, where we have a certain physical object of offering. The most sort of direct way of doing this is with a mandala plate, where we heap up offerings of grain and jewels to represent the universe. And we offer this to all Buddhas and all beings. And so there's a liturgy for that. There's practices we can read and help us with that imaginative process. And the mandala offering, we would accumulate, right? Something like, 100,000 times, or if we can't do that, just as much as we can. And this is a direct creation stage practice of imagination. We merge that with motivation of bodhicitta. We merge that with offering and generosity, right? And why mandala is so precious is because it also cuts through the ego clinging of like needing to be useful, right? And again, I'm not saying you shouldn't be useful. I'm just saying mandala is so precious because we're just in a room alone doing this, and we're not getting accolade from anyone. We're not necessarily looking like a saintly person. And so I think mandala has huge benefits in that direction as well. But with that said, so that's excellent. You can go and study that if you want. It's generally found in the preliminary or nundro practices of Vajrayana Buddhism, but there's also all kinds of nundro you can just find. All kinds of mandala you can find if you look. But the main practice is just imagining the universe in the most pure and beautiful way you can imagine it, and offering it to all Buddhas, bodhisattvas, and all beings in all the realms, right? Again and again and again. It's also this deep surrender where we're letting go, we're releasing. So I think that's why it really helps to move through stagnation in our practice in life, because we're releasing again and again each mandala offering we offer. Of course, so besides mandala, of course, things like prostrations, where we have like some kind of bowing activity, the offering incense, any kind of offering practice. Like usually a lot of traditional Tibetan Buddhists, every day they offer water bowls on their shrine, and water is just something easy. We all have it generally, and it's easy to offer, and we imagine it in a pure way when we offer it. We can transform it through visualization, and this becomes another way to accumulate merit. I like offering incense every morning, like clouds of incense. That's another way to accumulate merit. So again, we can see there's lots of traditional practices we can do here. I'm just giving you a couple, but it depends on the mind. What's your intention? Why are you doing it? So it has to come back to bodhicitta, the wish to attain awakening for the benefit of all beings, to free all beings, right? And again, I'm not assuming you know what that is. That needs to be studied and practiced in and of itself, right? So that's a whole area you can go check out. But mainly, I just wanted to focus on sort of what we mean by accumulation of merit. So with that said, I think I'm going to end it there. I didn't want to go into an exhaustive thing. I just sort of want to point you in a direction as another way to get unstuck, especially for those of you who practice the Buddhist path, and just work with that a little bit. The beauty with accumulation of merit is you don't have to understand it for it to help, right? So I just recommend just try it. Generate bodhicitta and then act. Right? Do something beneficial or positive for yourself or another. Do some mandala offerings, right? Make a beautiful flower offering to the Buddhas or a beautiful incense offering and offer that to all sentient beings. Imagine it. A lot of the time in Buddhist practice, we're doing things on the imagination level and sort of, maybe we could say privately to a certain extent. I think there's value in that. A lot of people might question that and be like, well, that's not very useful. It doesn't help anyone. It helps a lot of people if you get enlightened. I'll just put it that way, right? So this is something we need to give some thought. It's not it doesn't make sense immediately. But of course, if you're more that kind of person where you want to see direct benefit, great. Generate bodhicitta, go give money to homeless, go give food, go do an activity that benefits your community. It can be things like that too. It's fine. Okay, cool. So I'll stop there. Thanks so much. If this is helpful to you, let me know, because I'd like to know if this is resonating. And again, in this series, if there's anything you really benefit from to help with stagnation in your practice, especially, but it could be life as well, let me know in the comments in YouTube or reach out to me at my website at scotttusa.com. Thanks so much, everyone. Take care.